can go back outside.
We're taking all your fun stuff away. You don't get to heckle, you don't get to ask questions, you don't get to popcorn.
Okay.
Don't get started when we go back outside.
You can stick things in her right ear, though, from now on, and she'll never she'll jelly me.
You'll be like whispering nothing, he'll be like, "What are you talking about?"
I have the gift for enraging people, but if I ever bore you, it will be with a knife. Chances are, most of us use knives on a daily basis. They're infinitely useful for cutting all sorts of things, a weapon, a tool, whatever. Chances are, they get dull after a while. And when they do, we have to resort to whatever desperate means we do to get them back to usable order again. This has been my experience with knives. I go through pocket knives like candy because I can't sharpen them very well. So, on my quest to figure out how to sharpen a knife, I have found various techniques in doing so, and I'm going to describe one. The first step in doing so begins with honing. This is a sharpening steel, and what you want to do is you want to restore the blade back to its like new condition without removing too much of the metal off of the edge at a time. You want to place it about 15 to 30 degrees at an angle with your sharpening steel, and then you want to stroke it about 10 to 15 sides in each direction. And then after you do so, then your blade should be like new. And that is the step of honing. The thing to remember about this sharpening steel is that it's magnetic and should not be stored with other metal utensils because it will actually burn the edge on it. Now, after a while, with dulling and then honing your blade, it's going to cut to the point where honing isn't quite going to cut it anymore. So what you have to do is you have to sharpen it with a whetstone. And this is a very small whetstone, but this will do our job. Now this is very similar to honing it because you have to maintain the same 15 to 30 degree angle with your sharpening steel. And you would go at it, but not as if you were cutting into it. You would put it at the angle where you're slicing the layer, but you would go back. And what this does is it would develop a burr on the edge that you've seen before. That's why many people don't do it this way. Now, you can't, after you've sharpened it backwards and that burr is on the edge of the blade, if you were to try and cut something with it, that burr would break off bits of the edge. So you would have to go back to honing it, and you would have to hone that burr off of the edge of the blade. And so you have your blade, which has been sharpened and honed, but depending on the purpose of your blade, you might want something that's a little more sharper than before. So that requires polishing. 90% of people don't think this is necessary because for 90% of people, this is not necessary. What polishing does is it actually takes the microscopic serrations off of the blade. And what this does is it makes it so that you can cut through something just by pressing onto it. However, this also makes it so that any sawing motion would be ineffective. It would literally make the blade smooth, and it would take away any serrations. And what you do with this is you would do the same sharpening motion on a piece of wool, cloth, or even leather. And this is just to smooth out the blade and take off any bits of steel or whatever material knife you have off of it so that it does not dull your blade. So then comes the time where you need to test whether or not your blade is sharp. There are two ways of doing so, one of which requires a piece of paper towel. The reason why we use paper towel is because normal paper contains clay, and if you cut normal knife on normal paper, the clay will actually go on the blade. You fold it 4 times so that there's 8 times, so there's about 16 layers, and then you would try to drag it across to see if it cuts it. Now, this did not cut all the way through 16 layers, so this is not sufficiently sharp yet. Another way of doing so is to look at the edge of the blade and see if there's any light reflecting off of it. This is, depending on your environment, a more successful way of doing so, because you can cut through this better by simply pushing hard. You can muscle your way through all these layers, which when you use the light reflecting off of it, there's no way to mess that up. It's almost foolproof. So now, if you can remember how and when to hone your blade and sharpen your blade, and whether or not you want to polish your blade, and whether or not it's sharp, you now know how to sharpen your blade. And so now I ask you to remember the things that I've bored into your minds, and may you take this information into future generations to bore other people with this.
Good job.